welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Noel and Owen. This is the big fight breakdown for the undisputed clash taking place in Japan between the one and only Naoya Inoue taking on Ireland TJ Doheny. In a fight, it's not the most, not the biggest fight we've ever covered. Possibly not the most competitive fight we're ever going to cover, but stranger things have happened in the sport of boxing. Gents, good to be joined by both of you. We're big fans of Naoya Inoue at this channel. He's given us some really entertaining moments over the years, as well as plenty of views, if we are being honest. If you're watching this video and you're enjoying it, please do give us a subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're going to be honest here, gents. We'll start off with the opening point. Is Naoya Inoue, I don't want to say kind of entitled to, but are you okay with him having perhaps an easier fight? He's kind of fought Lewis Neary in his last fight, had fights against Stephen Fulton and Marlon Tapales previously, who are world champions. TJ Doheny, in respect, in kind of is a former world champion in his own right. He's not fighting kind of a journeyman here, but it's not an Akhmadaliev that kind of perhaps people were wanting to fight. Noel, I'll go to you first. Are you okay with this fight? Is this acceptable to you?
Oh, see, it's a tough one because you said it yourself, from a competitive standpoint, it's not an acceptable fight. But if there's any fighter in the world who does, quote unquote, deserves this type of an easier fight, it is Naoya anyway. You know, you mentioned there the legacy already speaks for itself, undisputed. Two weight divisions, Fulton, Neary, Tapales, all beaten. So does he deserve it? Yeah, he does. As a fight, I think it's massively underwhelming. But and I say that as an Irishman as well, by the way, who's disappointed that this fight's taking place. However, you know, he does deserve it. His legacy already speaks for itself, and it's not like, you know, maybe I know it's a video for another day, but will Canelo ever fight Benavidez? Who knows? I think anyway, when he gets through this one, he's gonna keep chasing these huge fights and getting these huge fights, whether it be at super bantamweight or featherweight or beyond. So I don't like the fight, but he deserves it. He's definitely earned the right to take this sort of opponent.
Yeah, and look, I think it does happen in boxing where you've seen pound for pound guys fight guys who aren't on their level, and it's a stay busy fight, whatever you want to call it. Kind of think we've seen that happen with the likes of Terence Crawford, Tyson Fury, even Canelo Alvarez. You mentioned there, they fought guys in the past who just are nowhere near that level. So whether you like it or not, it does happen in boxing. Owen, what are your thoughts? You're kind of can be a fairly harsh critic sometimes. Is this acceptable one for you, or are you unhappy with this fight taking place?
Both. I think we have to. Well, I think it's easy, not necessarily to forget, but Inoue's treated us to elite, world-class boxing against top-level opponents on Tuesday afternoons for a fairly long period now. My first thoughts when it sort of comes to that question is, you know, if you look at even the likes of Canelo, his CV and the fighters he's fought in between, you know, your Rocky Fieldings, your Avni Yildirims, I think you're going to get mandatories at times, and there's always going to be the odd fight where it's a bit of a massive mismatch in a sense. So I'm almost selfishly unhappy because we're just so used to seeing Inoue now in these huge fights. He's a pound for pound star. So I'd say it's more selfish reasons for being unhappy, but absolutely deserves like as you said, don't want to go too early into predictions or anything, but probably an easy night's work for him. Does he deserve it? Absolutely. Am I happy with it? Absolutely not. But I feel like he's earned the right to almost have this level of opponent before stepping back in with sort of a top five opponent again.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's worth remembering, like, these guys sometimes get told who they're going to fight. It's not like these guys have kind of entourages. They have teams, they have promoters, managers, trainers, co-trainers. And it's not a case of Inoue saying, "Oh, how about fighting TJ Doheny?" He's kind of being told this is the right fight for you to take at this stage, and this is the plan for you for the next couple of years. Um, oh, and I'll stick with you. If TJ Doheny, look, obviously massive underdog here, but a big puncher in his own right. You've got to ask the question if he hits Inoue flush, what happens? Inoue, as we saw in his last fight against Lewis Neary, got put down. If Doheny was to pull this off in Japan, let's not forget, how big how big would that shock be for you when you compare it to Tyson Fury almost losing to Francis Ngannou last year? I don't know what else. I don't know what else you want to compare it to. Anthony Joshua losing to Andy Ruiz possibly is a big boxing shock in the last few years. How big would that shock be to other kind of shocks you've seen in the sport in your time?
In my time, I've been thinking about this sort of pre-video. I think in my time, for me, it would be the biggest shock. Someone that got comfortably outpointed by Sam Goodman going in and beating Naoya Inoue in Japan. There will be no bigger shock for me. Even looking back, I was doing my research on the biggest shocks, and a lot of them have been heavyweight clashes. Like the ones you mentioned. You Hasim Rahman against Lennox Lewis. That style of opponent, Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson at the time. But then even if you look at some of those, for me, heavyweights, as much as they're shocks, they're the men that can switch your lights out at any stage. One lucky punch, it's done and dusted. So for me, I don't think there's really any question about it. If TJ Doheny beats Naoya Inoue, this will be the biggest shock of the 21st century for me. I think there's so many levels between them. No disrespect to TJ Doheny, he's a good fighter. Like you say, he's not a tin can that they've plucked out of nowhere. He's been in with some good fighters, obviously Mick Conlan and Baluta, lost to both of those. So I think you look at the fighters he's lost to. If TJ Doheny, I'll stand by it. If TJ Doheny beats Naoya Inoue, I've never seen a bigger shock in my lifetime. Definitely not.
Yeah, look, I think it would send shockwaves around the boxing world. Now, what are your thoughts on what Owen said? I almost said, how would you feel kind of waking up on a Sunday morning to the result? But of course, that's not going to happen because these fights take place in the, I think, early afternoon in the UK or Ireland. Now I know you'll be watching. I don't know if it will be a TJ Doheny fan club or something like that based in Ireland. But how big it would be a pretty massive shock, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there definitely will be a TJ Doheny fan club, but it'll be in vain, unfortunately. I have to agree with everything Owen said. It will be the biggest shock of the 21st century. You have the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson, Randy Turpin, you've got Donald Curry, Lloyd Hunnigan, the biggest shocks ever. I think it'll have to be right up there because, and it's crazy to say that, like, I'm going to be a biased Irishman here, but TJ Doheny, like in his day, was a very good fighter. Very underrated fighter, if anything. The man that went to Japan and beat Iwasa to win the title, that beat Takahashi, even the TJ Doheny that gave Daniel Roman a really good fight. Was a very very good fighter. But even at his best day, I wouldn't give much of a chance against Knight anyway. Never mind now. Um, I think he's past his best. I know he's won the last three by stoppage, but he's 37 now. He's picked up more losses on the record. He's slowed down.
Mm.
He can punch, but no, not enough to trouble anyway. So as much as I'd love to see it, it would be the biggest shock of our lifetimes, most definitely, and it would be right up there with Lloyd Hunnigan, Donald Curry, Sugar Ray Robinson, Randy Turpin for me. As crazy as that is to say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And look, I think it's important not to disrespect TJ Doheny. I think if this fight was happening 5 years ago, it's a different conversation. And Inoue possibly wasn't the animal he is now, and Doheny wasn't 37 years old. So it's a different conversation to what it would have been. But I think TJ Doheny, as you mentioned, Noel, obviously kind of you've listed some of his back catalogue there, is a good fighter in his own right. Moving forward, chaps, Inoue widely expected to win this fight. What do you want to see him do? I'm not asking what you think's going to happen. There seem to be kind of stories going around that he is going to stay at super bantamweight for a little while. He's obviously undisputed champion, so there's no more belts to win. But he kind of maybe wants to solidify himself at that weight, wants to wait until he's a bit older before moving up to featherweight. What do you think? Sorry, what do you want him to do? I think there's that Akhmadaliev fight there. That's a fight that people would quite like to see. Um, look, Liam Davies is the IBO world champion. He's got to be seen as a kind of a genuine contender to possibly fight Inoue in the next 12 months. No, what do you want Inoue to do?
We speak about this kind of every Inoue video. I think that, and I always say the same thing. I say I want him to move up. I don't know why he hasn't moved up yet. I know that sounds so selfish, so kind of greedy to want him to just move up, but it's because I think that he can move up and will dominate. You know, if he goes up the featherweight, I think he beats most people there, and there is some fascinating fights there. I know we've seen a big shock with Angelo Leo beating Luis Alberto Lopez, but you've got Nick Ball, you've got Espinosa, Vargas, non-title holders like Robesy Ramirez. I'd love to see any of them fights. I just, yeah, the Akhmadaliev fight, it is an intriguing fight, but I just wouldn't give Akhmadaliev much of a chance against Inoue. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I just think it's a fairly comfortable win for Inoue, and there's also Sam Goodman who was kind of in talks to face Inoue for this date, but I've no interest in seeing him fight Sam Goodman either. No disrespect, but these are just they're good fighters, but they're just so overmatched against Inoue and Liam Davis as well. No disrespect, but I've no interest in seeing those fights. So I want them to fight. I want them to move up after this and fight the likes of a Nick Ball, an Angelo Leo, a Rafael Espinosa, these sort of names, because I think they further cement his legacy than the likes of an Akhmadaliev or Sam Goodman for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you list the fights he's got at super bantamweight and then the list of fights he's got at featherweight available to him, the excitement levels are kind of like that. If you ask me, at featherweight, you can list five, six, seven names of there that would be fantastic fights, could possibly kind of be big fights for Inoue out of Japan as well. Um, but we'll see. We'll be watching whatever his next move is. One question for you now before we go, just because we've got a bit of British interest there. Inoue versus Nick Ball, who wins?
Inoue beats Nick Ball for me. I think it'd be a firefight, but I think Nick Ball's style will be his undoing in the end. You know, come forward, non-stop aggression. I think that'll be his undoing. But while it lasts, it's going to be very, very entertaining. But anyway, for me,
Fantastic. Owen, what do you want to see Inoue do? Do you want to see him stay at the weight to kind of take on all contenders, possibly come to Telford and face Liam Davis? You never know. Or do you want to see him move up to featherweight after this fight against TJ Doheny? What do you want?
It's got to be featherweight for me. I think, as Niall said, it was a good choice of a good selection for me and Niall for this video, because we actually done the Naoya Inoue at featherweight. Who does he beat video? For the viewers that watched it, I'm sure they won't be surprised to have seen me say it'll be a third undisputed weight class for Naoya Inoue and a 5-weight world champion. I think if you can say you're undisputed in 3 weight classes and a 5-weight world champion, we're having GOAT arguments when it comes to retirement. If Inoue was lightweight, welterweight, etc., I feel like those discussions may already be happening. But I feel like sometimes when a fighter's down at your sort of flyweights, bantams, etc., they don't necessarily get the credit they deserve. But for me, he's cleaned up in another weight class. I think featherweight's his limit. I don't think he can step up after that. He's not the biggest super bantam.
Yeah.
But for me, up to featherweight, I like the Nick Ball one because he's British, but not just because of that. I think it's 2 big punchers. And I think Inoue will get into the aspect of the exact same thing of let's stand, let's trade, and let's go for it.
Yeah, look, I echo what you say there. I look, as exciting as it would be, you don't want to see someone just kind of keep on moving up the weights until it gets a bit silly. And I think if Inoue look, there's been talks about Inoue fighting at super featherweight, fighting at lightweight. There's been that kind of, I'm going to call it a fantasy fight that Turkey Al Sheikh has been talking about between Naoya Inoue against Gervonta Davis in the future, which it's time for another video, but I think it's ridiculous. I just think it's a bit crazy for a guy that started his career at light flyweight. Coming towards the end, gents, we're going to do predictions. We're going to do it a little bit differently this time. I imagine both of you are going for Inoue to win this fight by stoppage. Noel, I don't know if you want to go for TJ Doheny, please feel free to. If you are going for Inoue by stoppage, I want exact round predictions, please, just to make things a bit more fun. I feel like if we all said we think Inoue is going to win by stoppage, I think we'd have some disappointed viewers watching this video. Noel, I'll go to you. What's your prediction for this one?
As much as I'd love to go for TJ Doheny, I'm not going to be stupid, and I'm going to go for round one. I'm going to go TJ Doheny round one, or not yet anyway, round one knockout. I think TJ Doheny is not going to do a Paul Butler and come out and try to just stink the place out and win a decision. But like, respect him for that, but that's going to be his own doing. And he's going to get caught in the first round and get put out there. I'd be surprised if this fight went 3 rounds. I'd be shocked, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I don't necessarily blame you for that. I would also say Inoue has perhaps taken longer to get some guys out of there than he was expected to. Paul Butler, as an example, Marlon Tapales, these fights went longer than they were expected to. But yeah, a first round stoppage is Null's prediction. Owen, what are you going for? What's your prediction?
I mean, for once, it's me not being the brave man with a ridiculous shout. I think taking into account what you said, Elliot, I think I've been caught cold by it before, where I said Inoue would. I think I said he'd blast Paul Butler out in 3 rounds max. But you could just tell it was almost a case of he showed the levels and then it was like, okay, I've had my fun now. I need to stop, yeah. Round 6, I think, and that might even be a bit too early, but I just think he's just going to toy with Doheny. I think it'll be a case of once Doheny actually feels the power and Inoue starts to land, it won't be long before it finishes. I think Inoue won't necessarily start slow. I think that's harsh, but I think it'll just be a feel-out process, and mid-round, sort of round 6 on the button, it'll almost be a case of, right, I've had enough now. Time to go home.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to go in the middle of the two of you, just to be a bit annoying, but I've got for no specific reason, I've got round 3 in my head. I think look, Doheny can punch a bit, as we can see with his record. Inoue got put down in his last fight, so he could be a bit tentative. But no, I don't. Look, if this fight goes past round 6, I'd be pretty surprised and pretty disappointed, if I'm honest. So got round 1, round 6, and round 3. We'll see what happens. I would love for TJ Doheny to do the unthinkable here. I really would. I think it would be fantastic, but we will see what happens. Owen, Noel, good to be joined by both of you. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give us a subscribe if you haven't done so already. Give us a comment with your thoughts on the video and your prediction as well. Gents, thank you very much for your time, and I'll speak to you again soon.